Hi, everyone. My name is Costanza, and first of all, a question. Can you hear me? I don't have much voice, so I can shout, I can be energetic, like I normally try to be. So please, if you can hear me, just wave, and I'll try to make an effort. So I work for the, wait, how does it work? Because, yeah. I work for this Worm Foundation, and today we're going to be talking about censorship. What it is, why we care about it, and what we can do. I want to make sure that everyone here is comfortable. So we're going to talk about genocide and extreme violence, referring to episodes that are in the past, but not too long of a past to be forgotten. So if you don't feel comfortable for whatever reason, please feel free to leave the room and come to me later. Also, disclaimer, I do not represent any organizations that I am or I was affiliated with. I'm here on a personal capacity, and I'm not a lawyer. This talk is not legal advice. I'm not telling you what you should do or you should not do to be legally safe. So, without further ado, this is what we're going to be talking about. So, the interplay between censorship and freedom of speech. We're going to look at the legal elements, and we will see that law is a means to an end. Then we will see what's the final goal of censorship. So we're going to look at governments, and then we're going to look at the institutions. So what's going to force censorship? How does it happen? And it is by institutions. So finally, we're going to see the spectrum between censorship and freedom of speech, and what we can do to protect ourselves and to avoid it. So I guess here we all agree that censorship is bad and people should be free to express themselves. So let me ask you a question. Where would you draw the line for freedom of speech? Some of the hardcore believers, and I know some of you here, will say never. And are you okay with knowingly insult someone? I am. My father was a cartoonist, and he did some pretty naughty stuff. So legally, I would say yes, but freedom of speech also goes hand in hand with respecting one another, and what we say, be excellent to each other. So here comes the twist. Freedom of speech is a right, but it is also a responsibility. You can literally kill people if you fuel violence and stir up hatred. And the higher the number of people listening to you, the heavier your responsibility towards creating a community that fosters constructive criticism. And this is because fueling hatred, fake news, justifying violence is not freedom of speech. So what is freedom of speech? According to the Universal Declarations of Human Rights, and I know the UN is a very Western-centric institution, and I'm not saying that, but I like this article. Everyone has the right to freedom of opinion and expression. This right includes freedom to hold opinions without interference and to seek, receive, and impart information and ideas through any media and regardless of frontiers. And this is very cute, isn't it? Too bad that this very article and this idea of freedom of speech led to some of the darkest moments in human history. What if you could back in time and stop Hitler's propaganda? What if you could stop the radio when the radio was promoting the genocide in Rwanda? Because those are the real questions, and those are the reasons that governments are using to have an infrastructure in place that they can stop whenever they want, that they can just shut down if they feel like. And those are the questions. So, on the other hand, if we start limiting freedom of speech today because, Tornado Cash is money laundering for terrorism, and tomorrow OnlyFans because pornography is bad, and then Instagram and Twitter because they're spreading propaganda, how long before we end up in a dystopian Handmaid's Tale reality? Not long. And if you think about it, this is nothing new. US, Iran, the Roman Empire, France, ancient China, Venezuela. What do they have in common? Yeah, you got it right, censorship. This is because it is nothing new. It is nothing that was invented 10 years ago. And it is like the most common thing in the world, unfortunately. So a comprehensive analysis of censorship overall will take too long and would be also out of scope here. So here we're going to focus on censorship of crypto projects. So in particular, the power dynamics behind it. So in other words, we're going to be looking at the act that prevents people from using software. And we will try to answer the question, why does it happen? How does it happen? And I'm not talking about extreme cases like preventing a genocide. I'm talking about preventing people from using a software because their IP address is in the wrong country, or because they use a VPN, which happens quite often. So there are three elements at play here. There is the law, there are governments, and institutions. And in the end, there are affected projects and people. So law. Some anthropologists see law as a means to an end. And I like this approach because it's very practical and it goes to the root of the problem. So it follows that human activities are determined by specific problems. And this guy Malinowski is the father of modern anthropology. And it says that in looking for law and legal forces, we should try to discover and analyze all the rules conceived and act upon as binding obligations. So that means that violating the rules means the end of the institution. The final end of the law is the preservation of society. And laws should be obeyed willingly and spontaneously. So what does it mean? What happens? What are the institutions that we need to preserve? What is the society that we should preserve from what? Before moving on, another element that is very important. Technology goes way faster than the law. So what we're building today, maybe not really yet regulated because all of you are going way faster than people back in the government. So that means that crypto projects exist in a gray area, which is a future because everything not illegal is permission, unless you're in Italy. Then in that case, it's another story. And one other element, law doesn't work like a smart contract. It is not like you kill someone, you go to jail. It doesn't work like that. Not common law, not civil law. It is way more nuanced and complicated and complex, and there are way more elements at play. What are those elements? So the governments, why do they censor? And this is what society will look like if censorship was at place. They say that they want to protect us from money laundering, from criminals, terrorism, legal sanctions against enemy countries because this is super bad and they need to protect us, preventing illegal activities, fighting fake news. So we're going to play a game now. We're going to get out of this amazing bubble here today, and we're going to step in the shoes of a fictional government official. Our name is Seymour Skinner. The year is 2024. And we face every day with new challenges. The world that we train for, that we grew up in, does not longer exist. Now we have like all those things like permissionless, anonymous, no central authorities. And how can there be society without central authorities? Like all those things like Web3, cryptocurrencies, mixers, privacy pools, they're a pain in our ass. We don't understand them. And we think that they're dangerous. And this is how they see us, without realizing that this is what we are like. So what does this mean? This means that they have a lack of understanding. They have a fear of irrelevance. And what do? They just try to censor. And they do that by using institutions. This is because in a centralized world, you need corporations from infrastructures that are acting as institutions. So let's see how that works. We like to say that we don't believe in institutions, but if we are honest, today we do have institutions. In order to protect crypto projects, it is helpful to abstract and look at the actors involved in sanctioning. So, AKA the permissioned, centralized institutions that we rely upon. So, Malinowski, the guy we said before, said that the work of society is done not by community as a whole or by individuals, but by small organized groups, institutions. So what are the institutions here today? Organizations like AWS, GitHub, or centralized RPC could be considered institutions today. They are structured. They are created to carry out specific functions. They have a set of rules that govern their behaviors. And before we say that laws should be obeyed willingly and spontaneously, how does it work in practice? Well, those institutions comply with the censorship law, and their actions have a snowball effect because they can decide who is going to be censored and who is not going to be censored. So let's see how it works in practice. Freedom and control is not like black and white. They're on a spectrum. And on the extreme left, we have freedom. On the extreme right, we have censorship. So let's look at how those interact with freedom of speech. We have another spectrum where on the extreme left, we have non-compliance. On the extreme right, we have over-compliance, meaning when they go above and beyond. And here, somewhere around here, we have perfect compliance. So here, in perfect compliance, we are somehow like on the censorship end of the spectrum. And it is enforced by the governments. This is what governments want you to be. So someone may argue that by doing so, you can guarantee access to your platform to other people, to as many people as possible. So centralized infrastructures, they have to comply in order to be able to serve people. Spoiler, normally people in countries where the centralized players are first-class citizens, while people in other countries are dual-class citizens. They matter less. So here, and this is like really, really scary, because here we have over-compliance. We go above and beyond what the government wants. We still have dual-class citizens. And who is where is decided not by governments, it's decided by centralized players. So they can literally decide to shut it down at their will. And finally here, we have total freedom, we have no compliance, but it is a very risky spot because people might get arrested, you might have sanctions against yourself. And those are the questions and the trade-off, but those are the questions that should be up to you. So if you want to know if your project is going to be transferred or not, those are the two questions that you should look. How much does Seymour Skinner feel that you threaten the system? Does he understand you? Does he understand what you're trying to do? Or he just doesn't understand and is scared? Those two things go hand in hand. And if you're relying on a centralized platform, you should also look into the risk appetite of the centralized platform you rely on. Now, this is the situation today. Personally, I'd like to be optimistic. This is because, first of all, Ethereum blocks transferring IP addresses are in decline, in a very steep decline. And we do have the tools to replace the current infrastructure. So what can you do? First of all, you should, yes, you should, not you could, decentralize the hosting infrastructure. As long as you rely on all those centralized players, and I'm not going to name names, you depend on them. And they can do whatever they want to your project. You should decentralize funding. You can look into DAOs, you can look into other places, but just make sure that also you personally, as a human being, are safe. So yeah, also go anon if you can. And this is because each one of us has a different perspective. Each one of us has a different risk appetite and a different plan. And that is totally fine, as long as the decision is yours and not someone else. Because it's your code, it's your project, it should be your risk appetite. It should be your choice where to be on the spectrum. And finally, one last piece of advice, and this is legal advice. Get yourself a shadowy supercoder. Thank you.